Welcome to another riveting episode of Risk and Return. I'm Charlie Gasparino with my partner, the great Bob Sloan of S3 Partners, one of many partners, but the lead partner there, the guru of data. Bob, since we're on a data kick these days and you're just knocking it out of the park with everything, all your S3 calls, let's get to some of your actionable ideas right off the top. I don't want anybody to wait.
Charlie, always great. We've been on a tear recently, and we said last week on the show, Oracle, very bullish on that. They come out yesterday. The stock is up 15%. Now, that's not 15% over a year. That's 15% in a day.
That was amazing.
Amazing. And we've had just a lot of really fantastic calls recently. We also dropped on our S3 handle on X a call on GameStop, which I know is near and dear to you.
I love this stock.
You know, one of the great things about doing this show with you is I get equally trolled by the same people, so it's fabulous.
Well,
it's actually fucking fantastic.
Now you're my friend, so there's no end to the trolling, dude.
So
they know you've been exposed. They know,
but we like you. We call them like we see them, and we're the umpire. We're here to call balls and strikes. And a good day for us is when 50% of the people love us and 50% of the people hate us because it's accurate. That's Wall Street. We understand that. We said that a drop in short interest actually was going to be bearish for the stock. The stock has been down. I think it's down 20 to 25% since then. So we had two fantastic picks last week. Next week,
let me ask you this. So let's just stop there with GameStop, because this is fascinating. Yeah. How did that call, just for my stupid journalistic mind, unravel it for me? How did that data point kind of foresee the fact that, Ryan Cohen, who's running GameStop, obviously a smart guy, he's going into crypto. He's trying to do a little bit of a Michael Saylor move with GameStop. How did it sort of know that the stock was going to tank after they announced that they were going to do a convertible that would finance their Bitcoin purchase? I mean, because what was interesting about all that is that people kind of knew he was going to do a convertible. It's been out there. He's talked about it. Stock still traded somewhat higher, and then on the news it blows out, but your data suggested that the news was going to be a negative, essentially,
because it's really very simple with this stock. If the short interest increases, people buy. If it decreases, they get out. Independent of any capital structure, any hedging activity, anything that they're changing business strategy, it's very simple. There's one indicator that drives price action. We happen to be the world's best at it, and we understand when we see covering in that particular stock, it's a bearish signal.
So it was covering ahead of the
short interest down, and then when short interest goes down, and we do publish it every once in a while on X. People understand that, okay, I guess that means that short sellers aren't going to lose as much money. And, the general public probably does not understand that people short the stock versus the convert, and the company's raising money. And, the whole ape thing where you had that crazy thing where people were getting diluted and they didn't quite understand that they were getting diluted. It doesn't matter. It's a very simple way of looking at one data point and applying it to the price action of the stock.
And let's just, in a short sale, right? You're not purely short.
Not at all.
You hold some of the stock as well.
That's exactly right.
You may cover your short, and then knowing that the shit's going to hit the fan in a day or two, you sell your stock. So remember, people think that there are just white hats and black hats out there in trading. There is none of that. These people are, traders are just all what's the way to put it? They're
Well, they're
agnostic
up and down the capital structure, and
and
they're
they're
doing things
agnostic.
for
They're
different
politically
reasons,
agnostic and they're opportunistic.
and they're opportunistic. But the narrative, and we were just talking about, Elon Musk and X and the Twitter deal. There's a lot of reasons for people to sell stock, and part of that is to finance something that is more senior than stock. So maybe a convertible bond, maybe straight debt, et cetera. There's all sorts of reasons why people short a stock, and that's generally to hedge themselves against another instrument and or a negative view on the stock. But that gets lost in the mix with GME. People look at short interest, they say it's going down. Okay, I'm out. And you've seen this precipitous fall in the stock in the last 3 or 4 days. So we had that right call, and it was a great call.
Amazing.
Next week we have one more.
Okay.
Jabil Industries. The ticker is JBL. It's a high-tech services company. It'll publish on the 17th. And, what we've seen is the stock is up slightly going into earnings, but short interest is down about 10%. So there's every reason to believe that this stock will pop after it announces earnings on Tuesday. That's our call for the week.
I'm going to hold you to that. I'm only kidding.
Yeah, well, listen, that's why by the way, this is a really interesting thing. We do at the start of every show, we put up our scorecard because we want the accountability.
Of course.
We want the viewer to understand that this is now free. And we were right. Maybe we should put it behind a paywall, Charlie. We will,
That's what I'm saying.
Eventually.
Get it while the getting's good, because this
Get it while it's getting as good, because it's not going to be free for a long time. I promise you. So
right. And
this is what we're doing.
Okay, we got it. To get to some more freebies, that probably shouldn't be freebies, but we love you, our viewers, all three of you. Only kidding.
Oh, you get 60, 70,000 views on your X account. So it's not 2 or 3.
No, I'm only kidding. I'm being facetious here, but let me get to some of my headlines, Bob, because we do have a great guest coming up, and we'll talk about that in a second. Number one, Jamie Dimon leaving friends and colleagues confused on his Oval Office aspirations. Now, Jamie Dimon's dance with being president, does he want to? He doesn't? Let's face it, this has been going on forever, right? I mean, how long have we been talking about this? What the fascinating thing is that he kind of fuels it. Now, behind the scenes, he's telling people, oh, no, I'm never going to do it. Can't do it. Not going to win. But every time he's in public, he keeps saying that he might do it. He was at some conference called Databricks. I don't know if you ever heard about this. It's a San Francisco-based AI powerhouse, Databricks.
100%. A great company.
Great company, right? I don't know much about it.
No, great company.
Yes. And he was interviewed by the CEO, and he said, would you run for president? And by the way, Diamond was dressed like very techie, with a black T-shirt and jeans. And he said, he looked to the audience. It's like 1,000 people in the audience, by the way. How many of you would vote for me? Just about everybody raised their hands, and he throws out. He goes, "Well, I'm a banker." And no, this is what he said. He goes, "Oh, look, there's all white people here. That's why they said yes." I mean, it was a funny thing, right? Then he goes, "Listen, I'm a banker. I'm 69. I always said I would love to be president, but you'd have to anoint me. I have never run for president. I think there's a skill in it. I also think the answer is no. I will do anything to help the country, though." The think is what everybody started to talk about, because he keeps hedging. And 2 weeks ago he was at something else. I think he was at the Reagan Library, where he was asked point blank, um, uh, do you ever want to go into politics? It was another sort of sit down, and he said, if I thought I could win, which I don't think I could, it's literally, he wants to be president. I don't think there's any doubt. And he is the world's greatest banker. And don't be surprised if he finds his way onto a ticket as a vice president. That's what I'm told. Could be the vice president. That's a way of getting there. He thinks he's too centrist to run solo, so it might be a problem. But man, this is a guy that accomplished just about everything: running a great bank, staying out of the financial crisis. running it very smoothly, scandal free, and that's a good. I could see him doing this. He's had some health issues, but he looks pretty healthy now, and he's still whip smart as always.
Well, health issues as compared to what? So, I mean,
Yeah, everybody's got health issues, right? I get you.
everybody has health issues. So, uh, that would be an incredible thing.
Kind of interesting talk about Musk and Trump, the war of words, which we're going to get into with our next guest, Bill Cohan, the great William Cohan, reporter, writer, author of all things business. You remember, they've been at it for the last couple of days last week. Got pretty nasty. One of the casualties of this is not just Musk's own business interests, which remember Trump threatened to throttle amid the whole thing. People think that maybe this ends any sort of chance that Musk might buy Truth Social. One of the reasons why the stock hasn't totally cratered, despite losing $400 million last year. They make a paltry amount of revenues. Everybody thinks Truth Social, because Donald Trump's on it, is doing so great. I mean, this barely scratches the surface. But one of the reasons why it's still trading at about $20 a share is because there's a notion that Elon's going to buy it. A lot of people say that's off the table now. Now, as you know, Musk came back and said, I'm sorry. He basically gave a kind of a semi apology.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe it's back on. Maybe one way to kiss up to Trump is to buy his company. But anyway, that's some of the stuff I've been following. And then one thing, and we're going to get into this big time with Bill Cohen, because Bill covers media, is people are trying to figure out what's going on with the Skydance Paramount deal. I mean, reading every bit of tea leaf. One tea leaf, David Ellison is at a UFC fight with Trump. Whether that shows that Trump, who David Ellison, as you know, runs Skydance. Skydance wants to buy Paramount. It's the only way the thing gets done is if it gets approved by Trump's regulatory people. On top of that, Trump is suing Paramount subsidiary CBS. So people are saying, well, maybe Trump is warming up to the deal, is going to tell his regulators to approve it because he was at this fight with David Ellison a few weeks ago. I hear not going to happen. Yeah, I heard that. I heard. Do not draw much of a conclusion from that tea leaf. The other tea leaf is that Paramount last week laid off like 3% of its workforce. Obviously, if you're on the verge of doing a big merger, you generally don't lay off people. You leave it to the other guys. I heard again, this layoff has to happen because this deal's taken so long. Skydance would have done it as well. Again, don't take too much from this. We are going to get into with Bill, Bill Cohan, the sort of the real sort of ethical issues, business issues involving how this deal is being throttled by these sort of concerns by the FCC about liberal bias, which the FCC has power over local broadcasting, and that's what CBS does. On top of this layer of a lawsuit that Trump has with CBS, which seems to be all combined in this sort of noxious stew that's almost unprecedented. And we're going to get into that in just a few moments with Bill. I'll let Bill has some interesting takes on that.
Well, only here would you get Bill Cohan and Charlie Gasparino on the same stage talking about Paramount. And that's what makes this place the place to be and listen to, because you get everybody gets to express their opinion, and it's done in a civil way to make it understandable. So rather than yelling and screaming and cursing at each other, it's just, this is my view, and we'll respect it, and we'll debate it, and we'll talk about it. And that's what makes it compelling.
And actionable. And, with the two leading reporters on this is, if I do say so myself. But,
well, it's true. It ain't bragging if you can back it up, right? I mean, it's true. And now we bring in William Cohan, the author of many books about Wall Street and many other topics, including the Duke lacrosse scandal. He is published in so many different newspapers, magazines, formerly worked at Vanity Fair. He's a founding partner at Puck News. William, welcome to Risk and Return. It's great to have you.
Great to be here, Bob and Charlie. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure.
Absolutely. Just one quick question to get started. You were a banker, you worked in finance deeply in M&A at Lazard, at JP Morgan. What made you go from doing that work to covering the events and happenings of what's going on in banking generally?
Well, if we can step back from that 17-year banking career, I actually started as a journalist. So I'm a graduate of Columbia Journalism School, class of 1983, and then I was a reporter at the Raleigh Times in Raleigh, North Carolina for 2 years, covering public schools in Wake County, North Carolina, which was ironic because I'd never gone to a public school in my life. But after that, I then got my MBA back at Columbia, and then went to Wall Street. So it's not quite as crazy as it sounds, Bob. Yeah, it is a little crazy, but after nearly 20 years as a banker, I think it was a mutual decision that the best thing for me was to do something else. And I decided, I don't know what went through my head, but I really wanted to sort of get more control of my life and be my own boss and not have some crazy, group head, calling me on a Sunday night, telling me the presentation that I'd worked on for several weeks was, trash and needed to be done completely over again for some meeting the next day. So I decided I would write a book about Lazard, where I'd worked, as you mentioned, and it was this crazy idea that I had. I thought I could write a book about the firm, which really had been, so secretive and a private partnership, and I had this crazy idea I could do it, and I did it. It became a bestseller. It won the FT Goldman Sachs Business Book of the Year award in 2007. And then I get a call from Graydon Carter. Do I want to come to the Vanity Fair? Got a call from the New York Times. Do I want to be a columnist at the New York Times? So that sort of is how it all came around. And I would say, my wife, who is in publishing, was like, who are you? Like, what kind of dumb luck is this? I've never seen anything quite like this. So that really is how that all became full circle back to journalism
See,
from banking.
my wife, who's got an MBA, would have said, "Are you crazy going into journalism? You're making X, and you do. I mean, the
Yes,
pay
your
cut
wife
had
is
to
much
be."
more practical than mine, Charlie. I was the practical one in our family, but I'd done the Wall Street thing, and it was time for something else. So yes, I did take a 99% pay cut to become a writer, but things have gotten a little bit better from that.
And you made
So,
money. Let's face it. You
I did.
secured yourself.
I did, and I'm a good investor. Been a smart investor, knock wood, and so yeah, basically my banking career has subsidized my journalism career.
So, like you and I came up differently. I mean, I studied journalism. I took a lot of econ. I've always wanted to be a journalism writer. I got out of University of Missouri J School in 80, I want to say 89, 90. Let's say 1990. That's when I started working various places, got to the journal. And but one of the interesting things is that when I going through, journalism was always a tough road, and there were always less jobs than people that wanted them. But there was sort of, if you were good, you could make a living and a decent living. I just kind of don't see that now for the young kids. I mean, you and I are okay. We're on the back nine. We're established. We can make a few bucks. We can do different things. But kids coming up today face a lot of different things. I mean, Puck is new. I mean, it's an entrepreneurial venture. Who knows what's going to happen? Same with Semaphore. The New York Times is not what it once was. I mean, take a look at if you ever heard the salaries at the New York Times, you would freak. It's not very high. The journal cuts. I mean, there's all sorts of TV is imploding. I mean,
yeah,
what do we tell kids?
all that is so true. I have plenty of friends at the New York Times who shocked me with, and we're talking Pulitzer Prize winners,
Yes, yeah,
Charlie,
it's just
who
amazing.
just get completely underpaid. It's kind of outrageous, and that's the New York Times, which is doing much better now than it used to. But when I got out of Columbia J School in 1983, the newspaper business was quite flush. EBITDA margins were 60%. They were making money hand over fist. There was obviously no internet, so they were filled with classified ads and advertising of all types. But you know what? We still got paid like shit, if I can use that word. I
I
Yeah,
can.
mean,
we did get paid. We did get paid. Listen, I remember my first job at the Tampa Tribune in 1990. I think I was paid $23,000 a year, and I was supposed to be happy with that. Now, it was I was living in Tampa. Trust me, I wasn't starving by any stretch of the
well, my
imagination.
version of that is when I started in Raleigh, I was getting $13,000 a year.
Right.
But you know what? I was a single guy living in Raleigh,
But you had a
and
blast, I bet.
I had a great
Yeah.
time.
You had a great job.
But
You had a great.
I had a great job. But I will tell you one thing that always stuck in my craw is that I always thought that I was the content creator. I was the one that people were reading. One of the ones, obviously, my colleagues and I were the ones that were producing the content that people were reading the paper for, that the advertisers were advertising around, classified ads were around. And so the people who owned the paper, the Daniels family, lovely family, 60% EBITDA margins, and I was getting paid $13,000 a year. They sold the paper for $300 million to McClatchy. And so one of the reasons I decided to leave Vanity Fair and start Puck and be part of Puck is because I always wanted equity, Charlie. And Puck
You
is the
wanted to
first
own
place
right.
I
You wanted
wanted to
to
own
own
it.
what you created,
Right. I wanted to own what I created.
which may be the model going forward for the kids. Before we get into some news of the day, I just want to give you one metric. I don't want to say exactly how much I was making, but I was making when I left the newspaper business at Newsweek. I was at Newsweek magazine when I went to
Mhm.
CNBC. I was making close to $200,000 a year, right? Senior reporter, kind of top, that's kind of at the top. I bet you right now, if you're at the New York Times and you're at the top, except for some very few people, that's kind of what you make. I kind of just based on what I hear, it's that 200K, which think about that in terms of
Pre-tax.
inflation. And think of inflation, living in New York City, the whole thing. That's how bad the industry is. The real question is, can is there a model of being a creator, a business model for owning your own stuff and being a creator? And can you eke out a living on that?
Well, obviously, there are people on Substack who are able to make a lot more than that if they're the very, very top. I think at Puck, we do better than that. And we also have equity. So, look, who knows what that equity is worth? But I mean, I know what it's worth, but it hasn't been monetized. Politico was sold for $1 billion. Axios was sold for what, 500 or something. I mean, so there is sort of a light at the end of the tunnel there a little bit. And if in fact we keep going with a Puck and it gets monetized or anything like that, then we all will be pretty happy, and that will be a very satisfactory model, I think, going forward to reward, the journalists who are creating the content that, Charlie, you should, be getting equity for what you do at the New York Post, but that's not the way those places work. And so, I decided to take this leap into the great unknown, leaving, a cushy job at Vanity Fair, although Graydon had left, so it wasn't quite as much fun as it had been, to go and start Puck and see if we could make this work. And now, 4 years later, knock wood, we keep plugging away.
Well,
But that's what.
I'm having that equity conversation after the podcast today with Bob Sloan. But
But that's what. Well,
now that we
no,
teed it up, but
no, but
you
that's
know,
Bill brings up a really
yeah,
interesting point, right?
right,
Which is
right.
what do you do when the landlord wants to sell the building, right? And so you all, at Puck said, well, I guess we have to leave the building and we have to go find our own real estate and build our own. That's
It was always the dream of every reporter back in the day to start their own newspaper.
right.
And now I guess, you could say based on what Bill's doing and other people that, the sort of technology is there where you can. And so maybe
That's right.
this is the model. I
You
want to
couldn't own a printing press back in the
Right,
day.
right. But I want to switch to topic since we're on media and old media. What the hell's going on at Paramount? Is this Skydance deal? I mean, I can give you my two cents. I'd
Please
love to hear.
do.
Let's hear what you know. Well, you're the guest. Tell
Okay.
me what you think is going to happen.
Look, I think, and again, you may know this, you and Bob may know this better than I, but clearly, President Trump wants his pound of flesh here for reasons I do not understand, because obviously the 60 Minutes piece had nothing to do with him. It was about his political opponent,
Yeah,
not
and he
him.
won, and there's no damages. He won, right?
Yeah, what are the
Even
damages? So I
if
guess
they did the worst that he said, which is totally edit out her word salad, make her sound like Winston Churchill, he still
which they
fucking
didn't.
won.
He at every battleground state he won all 7 battleground states. I don't
I
know
know.
what I don't know how in the world he's damaged, but he's a powerful guy. And if it weren't, and I assure you, they would be opposing this case with all their guns ablazing if they weren't at the same time, bad luck, trying to get this Skydance deal through the FCC. I'm told that until that the chairman of the FCC cannot even consider this case, this transferring the licenses to Skydance until this business with Trump and 60 Minutes is resolved.
So,
So,
so
and,
question for
and by
you.
the way, the drop, the second extension on the merger on the recap agreement is October 7th. So, I mean, it seems like a relatively far away, but it's not that far away. October 7th is going to be here pretty soon, and this deal has not even, begun to be considered by the FCC yet, because obviously the 60 Minutes business hasn't been resolved.
What is Yeah, and by the way, it'll take a second to consider it. The From what I understand, as soon as this other thing is done,
Shouldn't be
but
hard, I
it
agree.
won't be hard. So, um, the fascinating thing to me is this: Skydance wants to buy Paramount, the whole thing, right? They really couldn't give two shits about CBS News. I mean, they would. I don't even think they care about 60 Minutes. I mean, they may keep it around for a while. It still makes some money, but that's not what's in their wheelhouse. I mean, these guys. David Ellison is himself. That's Larry Ellison's son. Larry Ellison's very close with Trump, the Oracle founder. Is an independent movie director, so he cares about Paramount. Jeff Shell likes running stuff, but he's really into the sports part of CBS, kind of sort of figuring out a way to monetize that with other properties. Just getting involved in the news thing is just kind of, from what I understand, not their forte. So it's interesting that a part of the business that the future owners don't really care about or want is kind of holding the whole thing up. I'll make one observation. The second observation is this: I've been writing about how these directors are looking at their D&O insurance and saying, well, it doesn't cover bribery, and clearly, if Sherry throws him 50 million, if throws Trump 50 million, and they approve the deal the next day, that could be seen as a bribe. And there's the Trump Justice Department's not bringing a case, but who knows what Letitia James might do in New York State. So that is not a theoretically impossible outcome. So they're worried about that. But on the other hand, Sherry doesn't have a lot of money. I mean, you covered the Redstone family for years. I mean, I remember when Les Moonves wanted to sell the company. Wanted to sell CBS, which was a subsidiary of, I guess, Paramount. If you're gonna turn back the clock, I don't know if it was called Paramount back then. It was CBS, there was Viacom, and it all
Right.
went up to, right now would be nominally Paramount. He could have got 50 million for that, 50 billion for that
Yep.
at the time in 2017, 18. Now she's got to throw Viacom together, sell it for something worth 8, and walk away with 2 minus 500 million for the taxes. I mean, man, you would think she's got to pay, don't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're offering her 2.4 billion in cash. There probably will be tax consequences because there's a low basis. The family's owned it a long time. And she owes 550 million, right? She owes the Ellisons 300 million from last year, and she owes, this is my favorite part, she owes her banker, Byron Trott at MSD and BDT, or BDT and MSD, however you pronounce it, another 250 in the form of preferred stock that they invested a few years ago when she needed money. So, you've got this 550 million that is owed. If this deal doesn't happen, Charlie and Bob, by October 7th, and they walk away, and there's no, at that point, by the way, there would be no breakup fee, another 400 million, but that would not be invoked. I mean, she owes 550, so she owes certainly 300 of it 6 months later after October 7th. I don't know where she would get that money, because obviously the movie theaters that are at National Amusements are not worth that. Her stock in Paramount is worth that, but you've basically found the only buyer in the world, after years of looking for someone. And that stock is worth, nominally worth 850, 10% of, she owns 10% of it. Yes, she controls 80% through the voting stock, which is obviously going to be worth more than 850, but I don't know how you sell that down without that valuation getting cratered. I mean, she's going to be in a very, very tough situation if this deal
Is
doesn't happen. So she's she's got to have this deal close.
so aside from her having to have the deal close, are we giving short shrift to Les Moonves's vision? I mean, take what he did, the sexual harassment stuff, the allegations, and all that. Take that out. Did he have it right? Because I'm thinking this dude had it right. Get
He
out.
did.
Get
He did
out
have it
now.
right.
We have them. We got the money.
He
Let's
was a great executive,
he
with a
really
major
was.
caveat.
Right.
He was a fabulous executive. And he created a lot of value for Sumner. Again, I go back many, many years covering this to the two women that the girl Sumner's girlfriends who wanted
Yeah.
to take it all from him. Just crazy, you can't even make this stuff up. But Les did a fabulous job running CBS. He opposed the merger, the recombination with Viacom, with every fiber of his body. And then it was only when this stuff about his personal life came out that he got booted, and then she merged it over his wishes, and drove it right into the ground. So
She blew
yeah,
through. She blew through. If you believe she's walking away with $1 billion, well, let's just go by current metrics. If you value this deal at $8 billion, between Viacom, if she could have sold Viacom and CBS at the top, she probably would have walked. That would have been a $60 billion, at least. That would have been a combined valuation. You probably get you're a banker. You probably get a premium on that, right? And I mean,
yeah. I mean,
that's a lot of
each
wealth
one was
destruction.
a separate company, right? And I think they would have been easier to sell separately. Uh, and yeah, I mean, they were she she owned, her economic interest is 10%, her voting interest is 80,
Right, right.
so 10% of 60 is 6 billion. That's more than 2.4 billion. Plus she'd also get some sort of premium for her control in each company. Yeah, I mean, she's destroyed a lot of value. But obviously the dynamics in the industry have changed a lot. But I think Les could see that coming, and that's
I
why
know, I know.
he opposed this recombination, and would have been happy to sell his piece if he could have, if he was allowed to.
Do you think her cancer diagnosis is having any impact on the sort of fact that this thing is just dragging on? I mean, we obviously listen. I'm a cancer survivor myself. My heart goes out to her. I actually
Mm.
texted her PR person to say that. I mean, we're all rooting for her. Anytime you get this diagnosis, even if she says her health is excellent, it's an excellent prognosis. Do you think this is having any impact on what's going on right now?
Yeah, I'm sure, she is only human. I'm sure
Right,
it
right.
is. I'm sure trying to get this deal closed and get this 2.4 billion in cash for her and her family and her kids is weighing on her. She, it doesn't seem like they're that far apart. She's offered 15 in cash. Trump seems to want 25 in cash and 25 in kind services.
What
But
she was willing to pay 50. Trust me
Okay.
on this.
Well, I bet. I don't, I'm not surprised. It's chump change compared to 2.4 billion.
Right.
I don't know why it hasn't happened. Obviously there'll be an uproar, but to your point earlier, Charlie, I'm not sure Skydance, Jerry Cardinal, folks care that much about that uproar. I think another way to go is to let this deal close and let the Ellison Redbird folks settle with Trump. But apparently Trump's dug in. I mean, I don't know. To me, it feels like an abuse of power and meddling, and it all stinks to me. Let the deal be approved on its merits or not, and then deal with this other thing, which I don't think has any being a lawsuit, any reason to be a lawsuit in the first place, as we discussed at the beginning of this.
We, we can go around and around at 60 and CBS there's as someone who knows a lot about the conservative movement, there's a long held belief among conservatives that CBS is like at the spear of political bias, and this has been bounced around for years. That now the lawsuit is different than that. That's what Brendan Carr is saying. You see, so for years, conservatives have said, "Listen, there's all these FCC rules about unbiased news coverage, and if you want a local license, you can't have bias in your." It actually says that in law. No one's ever enforced it. The First Amendment's always overridden that First Amendment concerns, but Brendan Carr is enforcing that, and I think one of the problems that he has is that conservatives hate the base hates CBS, and they often make it difficult for people to like them, given some of the stuff that goes on, and just some of the stuff in the media that goes on, some of the sort of obvious biases. I mean, this gentleman from ABC, I don't want to beat on his grave, but man, that was just not a good look. You know what I'm saying? Scott Pelley, who I actually know a little bit, like him. I met him a few times. Nice guy, good journalist, good broadcaster. But man, going out and doing speeches that attack. Essentially, he's attacking 50% of the country, maybe more. I mean, isn't that a bad look though in journalism to go there? I mean, we all have opinions, but should we be scaling back the vitriol a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, look, especially our broadcast, and you would know this better than I, Charlie. The broadcast journalist has become quite polarized.
Yeah.
So yes, I think we could scale back the polarization and the rhetoric at MSNBC, at Fox, uh, and it pockets at CBS and and ABC and NBC. I mean, Trump seems to hate all the broadcast networks, CBS, NBC, and ABC,
To different
uh,
degrees.
different
Yes.
degrees. I mean, yeah, look, our nation is really polarized, as we know, and I'm sure the media contributes to that, and I'm certain the media contributes to that. So, I mean, I go back go back to why can't we all just get along? I don't know the answer to that
But
incredibly
wasn't there
poignant
once a
question.
time, Bill, like someone like you, who I would assume is left of center? Okay, I'm just assuming. I'm not saying that's true.
I'm from
Uh,
Massachusetts. I'll leave it
okay,
there.
someone like me who's right of center,
Hmm.
a bridge and tunnel kid, so that's generally right of center. Um, but we cared about our profession. Like we took our profession and like I would break a story about anybody. I just don't care. I've written critically about Truth Social. Did I sit there and think, well, this is bad for the conservative movement? No, couldn't care less, right? But do you think the kids are coming out in this profession right now and are way too politicized? They don't do it like we did. Like we could have disagreements politically, but we cherished doing our job right. I mean, you did a book about GE, which I reviewed, and I reviewed positively, and you interviewed one of the more conservative CEOs ever to grace on the grace. You got the last interview with him. It was one of the best interviews because you actually got to some really salient points about, asked him, did you manage your earnings, which is always something that has been, chasing around, Jack Welch. And you finally asked him, and he answered. It was a great piece of the book. But you handled him very fairly. I mean, you didn't attack him. You know what I'm saying? I've read other books about GE that made. I mean, you handle that whole thing about whether you manage earnings fairly. I've seen other books about GE and Jack, which took a wickedly political angle. You know, this guy is some right wing lunatic that fleeced the IRS. I mean, there was some book I can't remember. It was from like a notable journalist
Yeah, it's a
that
David
went
Gillis
there.
book.
You know
Right.
who it is, right? I mean, it
Yeah,
just.
yeah.
I mean, are the people coming out of J school and just the journalists they just gone off the rails on the politicization front?
I mean, again, our whole society is so politicized and polarized. I go back to our mutual friend, Anthony Scaramucci. I mean,
Yeah,
who says, "Look, out of the mouths of babes." I mean, he always said, "We can disagree without being disagreeable," and I just
I love
think that's
Anthony, but he's
great.
pretty disagreeable sometimes.
Sometimes, but look, I admire and love the guy, and
Yeah,
I don't agree with his. I mean, I would obviously never be in a Trump administration. He could ask me from now until the earth blows up, and I would not agree to be in a Trump administration. But I love Anthony. I mean, I love and because he says you can disagree without being disagreeable, and I think that is a tenet that I think it would be great if we could live by, not only interpersonally but in our media as well. I mean, everything is so polarized. It's disheartening. It's almost unwatchable because I just want to I yearn for like and I grew up with Walter Cronkite, somebody, and I mean CBS, but somebody who some figure like that who I could just tell me what's going on. I don't need to know, the bias on either side. I just want to know what's going on, and is it good for our country or not good for our country? Are these good things or bad things? I mean, are we becoming a better society or not as a result of this? I mean, I think we'd all like to be a better society. We'd all like to figure out ways to get along with each other. I consider you a friend. I don't think our politics are seeing eye to eye. I don't think I see eye to eye with Anthony. But look, I mean, I, you know, I don't see eye to eye with Steve Schwartzman either. But I'm
but
happy
but
to
why
talk
do
to
I
him.
why should it matter as to how we do our job?
I
I mean,
don't think it should.
everybody comes with a certain set of biases.
Absolutely.
Like Halberstam, David had the great David House. You say objectivity is bullshit. Try to be fair. We all come with biases. If you're purely objective, you're going to let Joseph McCarthy just spout bullshit and write it down, right? Okay, we get that. So we all come with biases, but we do have a craft. We do have to try not to look stupid, and try to be fair in that
And
craft.
try to find the truth. I
Try to
know it's
find
hard.
some degree of truth. It just
Right.
seems like politics is taking that out of our profession, and maybe if someone
Well, I
finds.
stick to it. I try to do that.
I do. I know you do, and I do too.
And you do too.
Basically, I try to show both sides. Try to
Right.
call
Well,
balls and
but
strikes.
it's one of the reasons why I called you, Bill, because, Charlie is Republican. You're from
I'm
Massachusetts.
not Republican.
Well,
I'm independent conservative. I don't know what I am, but I am. I'm not
okay,
lefty.
fair.
I'm
But
not
you're,
lefty.
you're but you're certainly a free market capitalist,
That's
and
true. That's true.
you're I think most people would say that'd be surprised at that definition. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no
But
one's calling me a lefty. That's for sure.
right. But that was one of the reasons why we reached out, because there's so little of it that's civil. And you all are having a very civil conversation about how you feel about the facts in front of you. And that's really what we wanted to do with this podcast, is say, hey, we don't agree with everybody. You're not going to agree with everybody, but at least let's listen and
Bob.
let's
Bob.
see what they have to say. And then we'll have, we'll try to restore some type of thinking rather than just yelling, screaming, emotional discourse. And that was really one of the reasons why I reached out. But, Bill, your book, Power Failure, was so great.
No, thank
Uh,
you.
the arc from engineering
That's the GE book that
You would, right. So
Bert
which
just
is
referenced, right?
about the rise of Thomas Edison and then the rise of GE Capital and the entire arc
Jack
that
Welch,
happened, and Jack Welch and
Jack
everything that
Belt.
happened in between. You know, if you gave that book to Elon Musk and said, "Hey, I want you to learn two things out of it," what would you tell him? Because he's the Edison of our day, I think. What would you say to him? Say, "Hey, you really need to focus on these two things."
Well, first of all, what if he really is the Edison of our day, and he may be, there's the first casualty of war is the truth, as they say, and Thomas Edison is actually not a founder of GE, although they really went to town on that part of the mythology. He was an investor, a founder of a company, and a small and by the time that it merged with another company, which Charles Coffin was the head of, he was a minority investor with Henry Villard and J.P. Morgan, the man. And he didn't even want to do the merger. He was against the merger, but of course the money men won out, of course, because Charles Coffin was running his electric generation business a lot better than Thomas Edison was running his electric generation business. So Thomas Edison went back from Manhattan across the river to New Jersey and like worked, building some limestone mine that went down the tubes. So the first thing I would say is, Elon, let's make sure your creation myth is real. I'm not sure it's as real as people think it is, because he just came into Tesla and was a money man too and took it over. And the second thing is, uh, pride goeth before the fall. I mean,
Mm.
hubris, boy, is a very powerful and dangerous human emotion, and part of the human DNA. And GE was an incredible company founded in 1892, and now 2025, it's kind of, it's kaput. It's broken up into its component parts, and it was once the most valuable company in the world, once the most admired company in the world. Tesla was once one of the most valuable companies in the world, one of the most admired companies in the world, and Elon's probably done a lot of damage to his company's P&L, his company's valuation, and his company's reputation. It's not a conglomerate, so I don't know that it's going to get broken up in the same way, but the valuation is, very highly dependent on, especially a company like Tesla, which trades at such an astronomical PE. It's very dependent on people's kind of emotions about the stock and the valuation and what Elon's up to, and he certainly hurt himself in the last 4 or 5 months as a result of his political activities,
Well,
and it's going to hurt his stock price.
when was the last time you've been around like I have? And this is one thing I've been talking about. I think I mentioned this to Bob. When was the last time any of us have seen a CEO act the way Elon Musk does? Now, take away his brilliance, all right? He might be, the most brilliant man in the world, but just a couple things he did. It just strikes me as like that is not normal behavior, and you got to discount the stock based on that. Remember when the short sellers were circling in 2018? He just blurts out on social media, on Twitter before he owned it, before he turned it to X. Hey, I got a deal for $420,
Right.
taking it private. Massive premium,
Funding secured.
funding secure,
Funding
massive
secure.
premium. Okay, deal never happens. Now that to me is
Well,
like,
funding wasn't secured.
yeah, right. It just to me that's just a level of,
That's
you just don't do that. And if you're the board, you got to like almost fire the CEO. I don't care who it is. You just don't say that. That's not the way it works. Particularly if it's not secured, particularly if it's, he later came out and said, remember, the SEC under Trump charged him. There was some consent decree that they worked out. He later came out and said he did have a deal, or he had people snooping around. I mean, no one knows if that's true. I mean, there's never been much, but in any event, I'm just giving what he said. But just any event, if you're the board of Tesla, you got to be like, what is that? Okay, or an investor.
Well,
Now
know,
he did, in his defense, bring the company back. He fixed the management issues, or excuse me, the production issues. Remember, they had massive production issues. The company starts to do better, obviously, from an operational standpoint. Not saying it's doing 165 times, price earnings ratio thing, like it's so overvalued. It's insane. I'm not saying it's doing that well based on the metrics, but better, profitable now. And then he did something with Tesla that with Twitter that was insane. So he goes in and he says, "Oh, I want to buy Twitter." He didn't even read the balance sheet. I don't know if he reads balance sheets, but he says, "Here's my last and final offer, 44 billion." And then and then they don't want to sell to him, the old management. They're told by, I think it was JP Morgan. I could be wrong about this. I just remember I've reported this out, like, the old Twitter man, like, if you don't take this bid, you're never getting anything near this, because this thing is not worth 44 billion. It's worth closer to 4. And so they hit it, signed the paperwork, and then he tries to get out of it, which to me is, again, crazy.
yeah,
Who does that?
but
Then but now
but
okay.
but Charlie, one of the things, Bill, reading Power Failure that really struck me, I had not thought about it until I reread some of the book this weekend, is, GE Financial, the use of the AAA rating to raise cheap funding and deploy it in other forms of financial investments and use that as earnings. And as Charlie referenced earlier in the show, you would handle that so well with Jack Welch about managing earnings. And it struck me, I was like, Musk actually used Twitter in very much the same way. So popular opinion in today's world is really equivalent to a AAA rating. And he used that cudgel in a way that was super inventive to give himself social capital so that he could actually get the premium. He wasn't able to tap the capital markets, maybe, with funding secured, but the stock price went up a gazillion percent. So he used that in a way that he understood the public opinion was a credit rating of sorts, and he bought it.
And now he bought it, but
now
after
he owns it. So I thought that was it didn't strike me until I read it again, that may be what he was up to.
I mean, but it's a double-edged sword too, because yes, he has whatever 200 million followers on Twitter. I mean, can you imagine having an army of 200 million people? I mean, it's incredible. So, I mean,
Incredible.
obviously he's got a very powerful voice. Even if you mute him, like I've muted him, I can't take it anymore. But you still get it one way or the other because he feeds it to you somehow, or his followers feed it to you. So but now, of course, his shenanigans. I mean, now he's kind of walking it back, obviously, but is picking a fight with Trump and shenanigans.
But by the way, let's unpack that fight a bit. It's not that he talked about the budget. I mean, no one gives a shit about that. The budget is the budget. You can have an opinion. He literally said the president of the United States had some nefarious connection with one of the all-time most horrible people who killed himself in his jail cell, which is Jeffrey Epstein. Now think about that. Unless you have the document in your hand, you could say that they once palled around in Palm Beach, but if you're saying,
Well, there's pictures clearly of
right,
them doing
of
that.
course, we could say that. But if you're saying that he's in the Epstein files in a nefarious way,
Yeah, I don't even know what that means, being in the Epstein files.
it's
A lot of
just,
people are in the Epstein files,
yeah.
but
I mean,
anyway.
half of my sources, and I should say that half, but I know so many people that knew Jeffrey Epstein. I wouldn't be surprised if I read their name in like uh, some email or something. But that's not my point. That's not what he was saying. He was saying something. He was implying something far
Yep.
more nefarious, almost slanderous, libelous, don't you think? I mean, like, what CEO does that?
Well, I mean, I think he's a sui generis individual. What CEO is CEO of 6 companies at the same time? And sophisticated companies, SpaceX, Starlink, Neuralink, the Boring Company, Tesla, Twitter. I mean, it's kind of remarkable. And you know, what person, what individual? I don't think in the history of the world there's ever been an individual who can put up 24 billion of equity, which basically was lost, in the early years of the Twitter deal, and only because of AI and merging it and the AI valuation that he got
And
is he been able to.
who knows if it's real too.
Who knows if it's real? Who knows if any of that AI valuation is real? But it's, it got the debt to be move off the balance sheets to the banks, which was a disaster for a long time. So he seems to have somehow resurrected it. In fact, because he's the richest guy in the world, is able to do that. But what individual? I mean, think about it, Charlie. It's like incredible. I still think about it. I want to buy this thing. I'm going to buy it for 44 billion. Then I want to get out of it. Then I'm forced to go through with it, which of course is the right decision. Then I put up 24 billion, and it's like, yeah, okay, who cares?
And by the way, he has a fiduciary responsibility, at least to the public shareholders, right? A legal fiduciary responsibility to Tesla. And then he took a sabbatical and went to work for Trump. That to me is just
he's
crazy.
got a fiduciary responsibility to 6 companies.
But his public shareholders is Tesla. I mean, yes, I get that.
Right. But I mean, SpaceX has a lot of shareholders too. Twitter, as we know, has a lot of shareholders.
But once you go public, it's
totally. But
the bar's higher.
But
anyway, we have to. I'm getting the hook here. I know Bob had one question that he wanted to ask me and you. Go for it, Bob.
So, in my travels in the last, I'd say, month, and it's funny, I'd not heard it before then, but obviously we're doing this show and it's getting a lot of views on Charlie's X account and mine. A lot of people have said that basically, Charlie, your interviews in front of Lehman Brothers, and Bill, your book, Postmortem, and also the reporting you did during the fall of Bear Stearns caused these firms to go out of business. And, this is not some junior varsity person. These are senior folks, have senior positions. And I almost had to do my eyes were starting to blink. And I looked at these folks and I just said, have we learned nothing? And I just loved your reaction to both of you because you both were central to the reporting at the time. And here we are 17 years on from the financial crisis, and that bubbles up. And I was floored by it, but I'd love your reaction.
I could tell you, I did a lot of reporting on Bear. I mean, I basically reported that they were being bought by JP. I broke the story sheet. They were being bought. They were done and being bought by JP Morgan. And then I broke a lot of stories before that. In the year before that, trust me, Jimmy Kane and I had many who I actually really liked. Jimmy's recently deceased. But we had some very nasty conversations. And I actually had a lot of nasty, I was threatened physically, believe it or not, by angry people at Bear Stearns after that. I was threatened physically by angry people at Lehman Brothers after I did all that reporting on Lehman. I broke the story that Lehman was going to go under. I was at CNBC at the time. Here's how I handled both things. Number one, I would say, your problem begins and ends with your risk managers. I didn't go into leverage 50,000 times to 1. Number one, and if you touch me, I will break your fucking skull. And I said that more than once.
I wouldn't mess with Charlie. That's for sure.
And I was a lot tougher back then. Trust me.
When it comes, I mean, that's obviously it's absurd in my case. My first appearance in Jimmy Kane's office was March 16th of 2008. So I was a historian. I was like, okay, there's a dead body on the floor. I want to know how it got there. So, and that's what my book, House of Cards, is all about, is how it got there. And the answer is, of course, they were borrowing short and lending long, which is why banks go out of business for millennia. They were forced because of their hedge funds going out of business in 2007 out of the long-term debt market, and they were forced into the overnight repo market. They were giving their creditors a vote every night on whether to keep doing business with them, and they voted no on the week of March, ending in March 15th, and that's all there is to it.
And that's true for every bank. I mean, I wrote a book about it.
Every bank.
Every single bank borrowed long, borrowed short,
and including GE Capital. And my new book, which is about Apollo, which is coming out next year, is places like Apollo are the first. This is a book about how is that dynamic changing? Have they changed up that horrible dynamic of borrowing short and lending long? I mean, Apollo claims to be borrowing long and lending long, and is that going to change Wall Street forever? That's what I try to answer in my book.
I'll wait for the book to come out. Bill, thank you. We kept
Thank
you
you,
here
Charlie.
longer than we expected, but
It's okay.
good conversation.
Good fun. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Bill.
Well, thanks for watching. Please subscribe. We're on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, whatever your favorite podcast platform is. Please subscribe, and we'll be back next week. Bob, any final thoughts?
We have great guests coming up. Thank you for your support. We look forward to getting more subscribers and more followers. It's been a lot of fun.